What's up guys, it's been a bit now since Jingliu's banner has dropped. We gave her a bit of time to cook and to no surprise, she has cooked. I'll be talking about how good of a character she is and how she has actually changed the game state. Right off the bat, I believe she is the best DPS character in the game. But before I get into how she is the best DPS character in the game, I'll explain how she kind of works. Jingliu is a ice destruction character and is kind of an AoE damage dealer, as she will target a single target and she will deal damage to the adjacent enemies as well. Her ultimate included, which deals a truck ton of damage, also does the same thing, in which she'll do damage to one single enemy and damage to their adjacent enemies. Now the special thing about Jingliu is that when you use her skill twice, she will go into her secondary state. In this secondary state, she will get a fat 50% crit rate buff, and her attack will be buffed depending on how much HP she consumes from the allies. Now getting to why I believe she's the best DPS character in the game, I'll have to explain on how a common DPS works in a game such as Honkai. The standard DPS typically will want a lot of crit rate and a lot of crit damage. Now this isn't every DPS, Kafka is one of the exceptions, but commonly they will want a lot of crit rate, a lot of crit damage, which will enable them to do a lot of damage. Now you would know, if you've been playing this game for a bit now, that getting crit rate and crit damage rolls on a relic is not the easiest thing, and a lot of people actually give up trying to get these stats because it's just very time consuming. I myself, I'm guilty of that. I would sometimes just give up and settle for mediocre stats, and I wouldn't be able to unlock the full potential of a DPS character. But here's the thing, Jingliu is able to give you 50% extra crit rate whilst being in the state you'll want to be in to deal the most damage. Now Jingliu is one of those DPSs where you'll want to build a lot of crit rate and a lot of crit damage, so taking that into consideration, all you would need to focus on is crit damage. Well, of course speed and attack, but crit damage is the most important thing. Now what if I told you, through her traces you gain an additional 30 to 40% crit damage? I'm not too sure on the exact number, but you gain up to 40% crit damage just from her traces, and you gain an additional 20% from her light cone, which I know everyone wouldn't have, but it's just, if you want to go for her best in slot light cone, it will give an additional 20%. So you will gain roughly 60% crit damage just from her traces and the light cone. Just from this alone, I could probably say this is amazing for the average player in Honkai, which don't really grind for relics and want to go for the craziest substats, as Jingliu is kind of helping you with that. Did forget to mention, when you enter her secondary state after using 2 skills, she doesn't use any skill points when you attack with her skill. You're locked into only using her skill, you can't use basic attacks, but you don't use any skill points, which just allows her to be skill point efficient. So you've got a character that deals damage to the single target and adjacent enemies, you've got a huge buff in crit rate and crit damage, and you've got skill point efficiency. I don't see any flaws with this character. Now, comparing to another DPS being the Imbibe de Lune Dan Heng, there'll be some people that'll say that he deals more damage and he's the better DPS. And of course I do see showcases where he does actually do a lot more damage, but the big difference is Jingliu is just providing a lot more help in her crit rate and crit damage stats. Now I know Dan Heng is able to provide some help with the crit rate, as he's able to provide some crit rate through his traces, but I don't think that's enough. You'll still be in the position where you need to keep farming for relics and just pray that you get the best substats, being the crit rate and crit damage rolls. For the free to play, I actually just think she's just a much better option, because you'll just be able to pick her up and deal a lot of damage straight away. You won't need to really be farming for relics as long as you would with another DPS such as Dan Heng. And then you've got that small drawback with Dan Heng, in which that he's actually skill point hungry, as in you would need to use a lot of skill points to be able to enable him to deal a lot of damage. Overall, I believe Jingliu is just miles above all of the DPS in the game. If you were actually thinking about summoning for her, I would 100% say go for it. She is an amazing DPS. She's very easy to just start using straight away. I myself didn't even prepare for her. I was not farming any relics before her release. I only started to farm when I actually pulled her. Of course, I was kind of lucky in being able to pull her light cone in just one multi. If you do actually want to see that, go check out the summons video on the channel. But yeah, as I said, I just believe she is an amazing DPS, the best DPS, and it's just very easy to start dealing crazy numbers of damage. Now moving on to something that I want to talk about, which is the game state, how she has actually affected it. I want you to think about now the difference between Seelie and Jingliu. The power creep between those two characters is huge in my opinion. Seelie of course being the first character to drop in this game, but now we aren't that many months into the game's life cycle, and Jingliu's just so much better than Sealy. Now this power creep, some may see this as an issue and some may think otherwise. Of course at the start of the game, Sealy was the best DPS, but as every DPS releases, Sealy is slowly going further and further down the tier list. And that'll be the story with most of the DPS in the game, such as Dan Heng. He's already been power crept by Jingliu in my opinion, and he was the best DPS on his release. Kafka and Blade, they were the best DPS on their release, and now they're slowly going further down the tier list. Now I do think Jingliu is a must summon, but if this trend continues in which a stronger DPS will always drop, is there any point to even summoning for Jingliu? Who knows if it may continue? It may stop. It actually may turn out like Genshin, in where they start to release DPS characters that aren't busted and they're just good. But all I can say for now is Jingliu is definitely the best DPS character in the game. Every DPS is going to be kind of unique in their own way, so I don't think they'll release a DPS that will be similar to Jingliu, in where they'll be able to provide so much support in crit rate and crit damage. So this might be just a one-time thing, in where if you want to use a DPS character at max potential quite soon after you pull them, Jingliu may be the one for you to pull for. And reruns of course take a while to come back, so if you are having second thoughts on pulling for her, I wouldn't hesitate and just go and do it. Like I'm telling you, you don't even have to have her at level 80. You could probably use her at level 60 and her traces don't have to be maxed, and you could probably get away with the simulated universe light cone on her, and you bet she'll deal a truck ton of damage for you. Well, that's all I've got to say. If this video was informative at all, or if you just enjoyed watching, please leave a like, drop a comment maybe about Jingliu, what you think about her, or just Honkai Star in general, and potentially subscribe for more Honkai Star content. And I hope to catch you guys later.